There's so much to enjoy and think about in this work, and I think it really invites contemplation, because I think there's some mystery in it. But I totally trust you as an audience member that you have thought deeply about this, which and the performers are so confident that we go on this journey with you. I want to start just by asking you, I was thinking about the contrast of Thank You for Coming attendance, which was performed here last year, and this year with Thank You for Coming play. Last year, the audience was in the performance space, and now the performers are in the audience space. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that sort of investigation in the early part of the show, in the ramps, talking with us, that the piece starts with us even noticing.
This was an ongoing process for me, and this has actually happened as we started to tour the work, this element of it. I did a lot of work with the cards from very early on in the piece, and I had the fantasy that the show could somehow be entirely written that way, like that the entire piece would be written that way. But instead, we would have invited audiences in, and I would notice like certain things that we had prompts that would say, "I wake," and like 1 out of 5 cards would say anxiety. I wake with anxiety. So a lot of the piece was composed through what I would notice were repetitions in the cards, but I didn't figure out how to make the show completely live out of it. Was this impossible thing to do. And so I wanted to create this. I mean, the work is a lot about voice. It's a lot about the sociality of voice, the sociality of story, the way when we speak our insides comes out into the world, the way we learn how to speak, and the kind of stories we tell and the repetitions and the ways they live in us. So the chanting in the beginning was a way into the world of the work, so that you would feel like it created a memoryscape for you.
Well, I've actually been thinking a lot about the sort of narrative structure of this work, because I've been thinking that the opening section is kind of like a table of contents of like how the show is going to unfold. But now I'm thinking it's sort of an index, and the whole thing runs backwards, because we end at the kind of creative process.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's both. It's also, I think of it as like an overture. Mm-hmm. You might have in a traditional musical theater piece where you hear all the songs first, and then, or like a pep rally, or like a rehearsal.
Could you say something about, because we've written on these cards, and pretty quickly when you become the storyteller or the griot or the choreographer at the end, I feel the sense of anticipation, like you're going to say my words on stage. Could you talk a little bit about the decision to, you put us all in there. You put us in the work in a very different way from our physical presence. You put our words in there.
Yeah, I wanted to consider the complication of story, the collectivity of it, the inability to really lock it down, the multi-perceptual, multi-perspective realness of it. There's no way to really understand it all. There's my little lens with my limited senses and what I can read through my human body. And I wanted to feel at once it cohere and incohere. So that's one of the things I was interested in, and I wanted us to each have a little stake in it.
So the sense of not really being able to pin down, you deliberately do with the story of Barbone, that gender fluidity, racial fluidity, like who is Barbone? But it's also really clear in a certain way. So can you talk about how you were testing that sort of border between what the hell is going on and it's too obvious what we're telling?
It's funny because a lot of it for me is about the co-emergence of things. Like I think that we think that, or I think as the story I tell is something fixed, or as even the way I see things as something fixed. And in fact, it's a dance of many things happening at once. And so a lot of the way we developed the work was starting from voice to story, starting from body two stories. So there was a lot of like inside out and backwards in the way the work was made. And then structurally, the way it's weaved together, it's always slipping and sliding. It's not landing, but it is also like completely all the ways all the methodologies you've seen story, all the big like, all the different forms of storytelling that happen, the genre switching.
You've worked with playwrights, worked in theater, and you also worked with a dramaturg on this. Could you say something about how you think that is influencing your creative process, or does it all feel like? I mean, I'm going to call everything choreography. So, so I'm just curious if you feel like, oh, this is more theatrical, or it's still a similar kind of investigation that comes from the kind of generation of the body.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I do like to think of it all as choreography. I do think choreographically about it. I think that's the way my brain works. I think editorial, I think choreographically, but I think very irreverently about what that could be and what's possible with the body. And the voice is a big part of that. Words are part of that. Anything and everything we can grab from what's around us is part of that. And yes, I've worked with a fair number of theater artists, so that influences me. Yeah.
So I think of everybody as kind of a character in it, including the character of Faye, the choreographer, kind of stepping in and out. Could you talk a little bit? I mean, I feel like in some ways it builds on some of your stepping in and out that happened in attendance, where you did all that labor. In this one, we see you kind of more in the directorial eye. We actually feel it in the beginning when you coach us on how to say and sing some stuff. Could you talk about the development of your character within this?
Yeah, well, throughout the series, I think because I'm implicating the audience, I felt that I couldn't not implicate myself, and I'm interested in making the labor visible and the magic visible within the work. So you sort of see the, curtain get dragged in, and then you see it go up, and then you still see the person pop out. So it's kind of part of that ethic that was developed, and I was always jumping in and out, and that is kind of how I work. Like I'm making through my body live in the room through those choices, and the text is written often by saying, "Say this now," or like, "Can you guys sing this? Can we try this?" Like these, yeah. Can
you talk about the building the work with the performers, and how that is an essential part of the, I think, product, about how the process is so important to what we see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's made with and through and from the people in the room. The whole last section is made completely from conversations that we actually had and recorded, and the work is made within a feedback loop. It's made within a response to, it's made through me giving directives and prompts and images, and more than that, inside an alchemy, I would say, that's made in the room. It's not necessarily like, oh, I saw that and that's great, and now let's do it. I mean, that's part of it, but it's a lot about a kind of chemistry and alchemy that's being made in the room, where sometimes people become like kind of channels for things, I think.
Her question is how this piece changes over time, because it's so interactive, and everybody is contributing a certain something. So does it move farther away from where you started, or are you able to keep it where you want it?
It does demand a kind of constant tuning. That's one thing. And a kind of also collective memory of like, was it exactly that, or was it this, But I'm also changing it constantly and continuing to work on it as we tour it. It's one of these pieces that is like, I'll be damned, I'm gonna keep getting it to where I need it to be. So I've changed it in some way in every venue.
So she's identified some different sections, the audience interaction and then the end of the conversation, but she's really curious about the moment before the conversation, where sort of all the excess of the performance is tidied up, and we see the kind of exaggerated personas. They put back on their rehearsal clothes or warm-up clothes, whatever. Could you talk about your decision to have that be part of the world that we see of this work?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. It's kind of exactly what you said. It's this sort of dropping back into the room. It's the clearing away of the stuff. It's the thing that we often are doing after rehearsal, and kind of I find it very beautiful and soothing to just see that all get stripped away, and also kind of sad. And I think it's also playing with this thing of like, oh, now we are us, but that's also still got all these props and things and objects, and it's just it looks stripped, and we're real now, but it's also got all this game in it.
I got an idea. I'm gonna take my face and I'm gonna put it on your face. Yeah, that's right, my face on your face.
Yeah, Ma, you're right. We gotta get out of here. Let's move to the big city, and I'll be a star. I'm gonna be famous, and I'm gonna be big.
That's right, darling. You're gonna have your name on 7 different marquees in 7 different cities at the same time.
Yeah, I'm gonna be big. I'm gonna be big, I'm gonna be big. I'm gonna be big, I'm gonna be big. I'm gonna be Liza, bigger than Judy, bigger than Barbara, bigger than Whitney, or Mariah, or Beyonce, or Shakira, or Aretha, or Tina, or Cher, or Britney, another diva, or Dolly.